Let me be direct with you from the outset. What we are witnessing in the Aegean Sea is not a border dispute. It is not a diplomatic spat between two NATO allies. What we are witnessing is the quiet collapse of the alliance structure that has held European security together for 75 years, and it happened in 11 minutes. I am looking at satellite imagery that has been circulating among defense analysts at the European Union military staff for the past 48 hours. What it shows is not a training exercise. It is not a mock deployment. What it shows is the smoldering remains of Greece's Scaramanga naval base, 14 kilometers west of Athens, where 11 vessels were docked as of April 9, 2026. 8 of those vessels are no longer operational. 3 are partially submerged. And 85 Turkish Bayraktar TB3 drones accomplished this in less time than it takes most people to commute to work. In the next 20 minutes, I am going to walk you through exactly why this attack represents the most significant fracture in NATO since its founding, why the Pentagon's response tells you everything you need to know about American priorities in 2026, and why your grocery bills are about to reflect a conflict most Americans cannot find on a map. This is the analysis you will not get from CNN, MSNBC, or Fox News. Subscribe now if you have not already, because what we are about to cover is being actively suppressed in mainstream Western media coverage. Let's start with geography, because it determines everything else that follows. The Aegean Sea is not a large body of water. At its widest point, it measures approximately 430 kilometers. At its narrowest choke points, Greek and Turkish territorial waters come within 6 nautical miles of each other. This proximity has created 75 years of simmering territorial disputes over approximately 2,400 islands, islets, and rock formations. Some of these islands are inhabited, most are not, but every single one of them extends territorial waters, exclusive economic zones, and airspace claims that overlap, contradict, and antagonize. Greece controls roughly 3,000 islands in total. Turkey controls the Anatolian coastline to the east. Between them lies the third largest concentration of natural gas reserves in the eastern Mediterranean, estimated by the U.S. Geological Survey at 122 trillion cubic feet. To put that in perspective, that is enough natural gas to power the entire European Union for approximately 11 years at current consumption rates. This means that what appears to be an argument about rocks and sovereignty is actually about energy independence, NATO cohesion, and the future of European reliance on American security guarantees. According to reporting by Reuters and confirmed by multiple European defense officials, the Turkish operation began at Daro 4:17 local time on April 9th. The drones launched from 3 separate air bases in western Turkey. Flight tracking data obtained by Defense News Asia shows 85 individual drone signatures converging on Greek airspace from the northeast, east, and southeast simultaneously. Greece's S-300 air defense systems, stationed on Crete, did not engage. Greece's Patriot batteries positioned near Athens did not engage, and Greece's F-16 fighters, which were scrambled from Suda Bay, arrived 14 minutes after the last Turkish drone had already returned to Turkish airspace. Subscribe if you are watching this and realizing you are not getting this level of analysis anywhere else. Now let's talk about what Turkey actually deployed, because the technology matters more than most people realize. Announcement number 1, the Bayraktar TB3 naval combat drone. And this one matters more than anything else because it represents a shift in how middle powers project military force without triggering Article 5 of the NATO treaty. The TB3 is a carrier-capable unmanned combat aerial vehicle designed specifically for operations from short runways and amphibious assault ships. It has a wingspan of 14 meters, a maximum takeoff weight of 450 kilograms, and can carry up to 4 precision-guided munitions. But here is what makes it strategically significant. It costs approximately $5 million per unit. A single F-35 fighter jet costs $80 million. A single Greek Meko-class frigate costs $400 million. Turkey deployed $425 million worth of drones to destroy or disable $3 billion worth of Greek naval assets. The return on investment is not close. According to an analysis published by the International Institute for Strategic Studies, the TB3 uses a distributed swarm coordination algorithm that allows multiple drones to operate autonomously once deployed. This means a human operator launches the swarm, designates the target zone, and the drones coordinate their own attack patterns, timing, and targeting priorities without further input. Commander Elena Vasiliou of the Hellenic Navy has acknowledged publicly that Greek air defense systems are calibrated to detect and engage manned aircraft and ballistic missiles, not swarms of small, low-signature drones operating in coordinated attack patterns. Turkey currently operates between 140 and 160 of these drones. That number matters. It means Turkey can sustain operations of this scale and complexity repeatedly without depleting its inventory. It also means Turkey can export this capability to allied nations, which it has already begun doing. Azerbaijan, Pakistan, and Qatar have all purchased Bayraktar systems in the last 18 months. Received. That is announcement number 1. Announcement number 2, the target selection was not random. This is the part most analysts are missing. Scaramanga Naval Base is not Greece's primary naval facility. That would be Suda on Crete, which hosts both Greek and American forces. Scaramanga is a shipyard. It is where Greece conducts maintenance, refitting, and upgrades on its aging naval fleet. Destroying ships at Scaramanga does not just remove those vessels from active service. It removes Greece's ability to repair and maintain its remaining fleet. According to reporting by the Athens-based Kathimerini newspaper, the vessels destroyed or damaged include 2 Miko-class frigates undergoing propulsion system overhauls, 3 fast attack craft receiving weapons upgrades, and 1 Poseidon-class submarine in dry dock for reactor maintenance. Stay with me, because this is where the strategic calculus becomes impossible to ignore. Greece operates a total of 13 frigates and destroyers. Losing 2 frigates and the ability to maintain the remaining 11 is not a tactical setback. It is a strategic degradation. Greece's ability to patrol its territorial waters, enforce its exclusive economic zone, and project naval power in the Aegean has been reduced by an estimated 35 to 40%, and it happened in 11 minutes. But there is something even more significant that almost nobody in the mainstream media is connecting correctly. The timing of this operation corresponds exactly with the collapse of negotiations over Cyprus reunification talks in Geneva. On April 7th, 2 days before the drone strike, Turkish Cypriot leader Ersin Tatar walked out of UN-mediated talks after Greece refused to recognize Turkish exploration rights in offshore gas fields south of Cyprus. 12 hours after Tatar's departure, Turkish President Erdogan gave a televised address in which he stated, and I am quoting him directly here, "We have given diplomacy every opportunity. Greece will now understand that our patience is not infinite." The drone strike followed 36 hours later. This was not a spontaneous escalation. This was a pre-planned military operation designed to enforce a political outcome through the demonstration of technological and tactical superiority. And it worked. Received. That is announcement number 2. Announcement number 3, NATO's response tells you everything about the alliance's future, and it is not reassuring if you are Greece. On April 10th, 24 hours after the attack, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg issued a statement calling for restraint on all sides and emphasizing the need for dialogue and de-escalation. Notice what that statement does not say. It does not invoke Article 5, which treats an attack on one member as an attack on all members. It does not condemn Turkey by name. It does not promise military support to Greece. It calls for restraint on all sides, as if Greece bears equal responsibility for having its naval base destroyed. The United States issued a separate statement on April 11th. Secretary of State Marco Rubio described the situation as concerning and urged both nations to return to diplomatic channels. President Trump, in a press gaggle outside the White House, stated that Greece and Turkey need to work this out themselves. We're not getting involved in every European problem anymore. Think carefully about what this represents. When a NATO member conducts a military strike against another NATO member's sovereign territory, destroys $2. $3 billion in military assets, and the alliance's response is to urge dialogue without consequences, that is not ambiguity. That is not diplomatic nuance. That is a verdict. The verdict is this. NATO will not defend Greece against Turkey because Turkey controls the Bosphorus Strait, hosts Incirlik Air Base, and fields the second largest military in the alliance. Germany and France issued a joint statement on April 12th calling for an emergency EU foreign ministers meeting. That meeting occurred on April 14th. The outcome was a non-binding resolution expressing deep concern. No sanctions were proposed. No military support was offered. No diplomatic expulsion occurred. Greece is being told in the clearest possible terms that it is on its own. Received. That is announcement number 3. Now let's talk about what is really happening behind the headlines, because there are 2 stories playing out simultaneously, and the mainstream media is only covering one of them. The first story is the Aegean conflict itself, the drones, the naval base, the sovereignty disputes. The second story is about energy, leverage, and the slow-motion collapse of American influence in the Eastern Mediterranean. In February 2026, Turkey and Russia signed a 15-year natural gas transit agreement that bypasses Ukraine entirely and runs subsea pipelines directly from Russian fields in the Black Sea to Turkish distribution hubs in Anatolia. That agreement guarantees Turkey access to Russian gas at 40% below current European market rates. It also positions Turkey as the primary transit hub for Russian energy exports to southern Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Turkey is no longer dependent on Western energy infrastructure. It is now a competitor to Western energy interests. Greece, by contrast, remains entirely dependent on liquefied natural gas imports, primarily from the United States and Qatar. According to data from the International Energy Agency, Greece pays an average of $14 per million-dollar BTU for LNG imports. Turkey, under its agreement with Russia, pays approximately $6 per million-dollar BTU. That price differential translates into billions of dollars in competitive advantage for Turkish manufacturing, agriculture, and export industries. It also means Turkey can economically coerce Greece by threatening to cut off transit routes or manipulate regional energy prices. Erdogan understands this leverage completely. In his April 7th address, he explicitly referenced energy, stating, "Those who deny our rights in the Aegean should ask themselves who will supply their energy when winter comes." That was not a rhetorical flourish. That was a threat. And the drone strike was the enforcement mechanism. If you own a vehicle, if you heat your home with natural gas, if you operate a business with any energy-intensive component, what is happening in the Aegean is not a foreign policy story. It is a cost of living story. European natural gas prices spiked 22% in the 72 hours following the drone strike. American gasoline futures rose 8% on the expectation that European demand for LNG will increase, diverting supply from domestic markets. These effects are showing up in your gas tank, your heating bill, and the freight costs embedded in almost everything you buy. This pattern has repeated throughout history, and every time it repeats, the outcome is the same. Let me take you back 2,246 years to the Peloponnesian War, 431 BC to 404 BC. Athens and Sparta, the two dominant Greek city-states, went to war. They fought for 27 years. Both sides exhausted themselves militarily, economically, and demographically. And who won? Macedon. Philip II and his son Alexander the Great swept in from the north and conquered the entire Greek world, while Athens and Sparta were too weak to resist. The parallel is exact. Greece is Athens, overextended and reliant on naval power. Turkey is Sparta, land-based and militarily pragmatic. The European Union is the Delian League, an alliance of convenience that dissolves under pressure. And the rising power waiting in the wings is not Macedon. It is China. While Europe fractures over energy, sovereignty, and NATO credibility, China is signing port access agreements in Piraeus, infrastructure deals in Istanbul, and Belt and Road contracts across the Balkans. The Aegean conflict is not about drones and naval bases. It is about which civilization will dominate the Eastern Mediterranean for the next 50 years. So, where does this leave us? Let me give you three clear paths, because there is no honest middle ground here. Path 1. Diplomatic resolution. Greece and Turkey return to negotiations, brokered by Germany and France, and reach a compromise on territorial waters, exclusive economic zones, and energy exploration rights. Turkey agrees to pay reparations for the destroyed vessels. NATO reasserts Article 5 credibility. Regional stability is restored. For this to happen, Turkey would need to perceive greater benefit from cooperation than from confrontation. Currently, all of Turkey's incentives point toward confrontation. The likelihood of Path 1 is approximately 15%. Path 2. Frozen conflict. Greece rebuilds its naval capacity with EU financial support and American weapons sales. Turkey continues low-intensity operations, drone incursions, and airspace violations without triggering full-scale war. Neither side gains decisive advantage, but both sides bleed resources and credibility. This is the most likely scenario, and it is the worst possible outcome for everyone except arms manufacturers. The likelihood of Path 2 is approximately 60%. Path 3. Escalation. Greece requests and receives Patriot missile batteries, F-35 fighters, and naval support from the United States. Turkey interprets this as an existential threat and conducts a second wave of drone strikes, this time targeting Greek air defense installations and fuel depots. Article 5 is invoked. NATO fractures completely as Germany and France refuse to support military action against Turkey. The alliance collapses. For this to happen, Greece would need to believe that American security guarantees are credible and that escalation serves its interests. Given Trump's public statements and NATO's non-response, that belief is not supported by evidence. The likelihood of Path 3 is approximately 25%. I think we are on Path 2, and I think we will remain on Path 2 until either Turkey achieves its energy and territorial objectives through incremental aggression, or Greece makes a catastrophic miscalculation that forces escalation. The frozen conflict scenario is sustainable for Turkey because it achieves strategic degradation of Greek capabilities without triggering alliance obligations. It is not sustainable for Greece because it requires indefinite military spending increases that Greece's economy cannot support. Here are the questions I want you to take away. First, if NATO will not defend Greece against Turkey, what is the purpose of NATO? Second, if the United States will not enforce alliance commitments when a member is attacked, what is the value of American security guarantees? Third, If Europe cannot resolve a conflict between two of its own members, how will it respond when China, Russia, or any other external actor applies pressure? Tell me in the comments what you think happens next. Tell me if you believe NATO survives this decade intact. Tell me if you think Greece has any realistic path forward that does not involve either submission to Turkish demands or complete abandonment of its territorial claims. We will keep tracking every development in the Aegean, the Eastern Mediterranean, and NATO's slow-motion dissolution. That is what this channel does every single day. Subscribe now. Share this analysis with everyone in your network who is trying to understand why European security is collapsing. Turn on notifications so you do not miss the next update, and we will see you in the next analysis.